For centuries now, mankind has been thrilled and captivated with the mystery of the sea. The sea, with its endless pull, beckons adventurous souls with thrills and challenges. Also, there was a hint of darkness, uncovering greatest fears, worse than a child's worst nightmare. The lurking danger with Great Lakes storms lies in the high frequency of their waves. Bone-chilling walls of water strike vessels in rapid procession, a deadly force known as chop. In America, the Great Lakes offer their own unique history. They were allegedly carved out by a glacier, which would be a later argument, and are eternally supplied by nature. These huge bodies of water have been a part of commerce, with just about every good imaginable shipped across by huge freighters edging their way through the Great Lakes. Disasters, however, were inevitable. In all, it is estimated that more than 10,000 wrecks lay at the bottom of the 5 Great Lakes, every one having its own tragic story. It's gotta be sobering numbers indeed. They learned quickly that the Great Lakes could be very dangerous and treacherous during storms. Taking into account Murphy's Law, what can go wrong will go wrong, and at the worst possible moment. Storms on the lake could be unrelenting, downright terrifying. 62 years earlier to the day, November 10th, 270 men perished in 13 wrecks on the Great Lakes in 1913. As fall changed to winter, master mariners encountered uncompromising nor'easters that battered wooden ships to kindling. Even the modern steamer, built with all the modern specification, faced disaster, and the seas erupted in anger. Lake Superior is known by experienced sailors as Old Treacherous. Drowning isn't the number one cause, it's hypothermia, freezing to death. Lake Superior was known by the Chippewa Indians as Gitchagumi, who never gives up her dead because of the frigid temperatures. The Great Lakes are even more treacherous than the ocean. With the ocean you have the expanse, you pitch or roll. The Great Lakes are in a confined area, and it's 1,200 feet deep. With the Great Lakes, it pitches and rolls. As the biggest freshwater body in the world, the lake stays cold year-round. Looking at Lake Superior, many folks think that it looks like the head of a wolf, with the Keweenaw Peninsula being his mouth. Then up where his eye is Isle Royale, and down a little closer to his neck is Michigan Island, and below that, the little dot is Caribou Island. The channel in between there will come into play. Then just north of there lies 6 Fathom Shoal. It's listed as 36 feet deep, but there are jaggedy rocks on the shoal. But the actual charts used by the Fitzgerald were drawn up in 1919 and were off in many places. In some places, it's only 23 feet with jaggedy rocks. The Fitzgerald, with a summer load, had a 27 to 29 foot draft. When launched on June 7, 1958, she was the largest ship on North America's Great Lakes, and remains the largest ship to have sunk there. It drew a crowd of 10,000. On the day she was launched, a few bad luck omens, if you will, happened. First, it took Mrs. Fitzgerald 3 attempts to break the champagne bottle, which is viewed by superstitious sailors as bad luck, and the boards that were supposed to be removed so the ship could slide into the water grudgingly gave way. It was as if the ship itself didn't want to go into the water. When it was released, it violently went into the water, and on the bounce back, the ship hit so hard, one remarked that it looked like the ship was trying to crawl out of the water, as if the ship sensed its future. One person incidentally died of a heart attack. Coincidentally, the number of workers from the shipyard that were on the ship when it was launched to ride it down numbered 29. The SS Fitzgerald was going to be a monster of a freighter. She was built 1 foot less than the maximum limit allowed on the Great Lakes. 729 feet, with the locks being 730 feet, with a beam of 75 feet, the maximum limit. At 13,642 tons, she could carry 25,000 tons in her hold. However, this maximum had been gone over many times. The more tonnage and cargo that they hold, the deeper they sit in the water. Therefore, the less freeboard they have. That is their clearance above the water, or buoyancy. With a crew of 29, she had massive steam-powered engine. She could make 16 knots. For 17 years, the Edmund Fitzgerald carried taconite iron ore from mines near Duluth, Minnesota to ironworks in Detroit, Michigan, and Toledo, Ohio, and other Great Lakes ports. As a workhorse, she set seasonal haul records 6 times, often breaking her own record. Captain Peter Pulser was known for piping music day or night over the ship's intercom while passing through the St. Clair and Detroit rivers, between Lakes Huron and Erie, and entertaining spectators at the Sioux Locks between Lakes Superior and Huron, with a running commentary about the ship, her size, record-breaking performance, and the DJ captain endeared Edmund Fitzgerald to boat watchers. Carrying a full cargo of ore pellets with Captain Ernest M. McSorley in command, the Toledo-born native took the place of captain in 1972. She embarked on her ill-fated voyage from Superior, Wisconsin, near Duluth, on the afternoon of November 9, 1975, en route to a steel mill near Detroit. This was going to be Captain McSorley's final voyage that he would be making. At 62 years old, he was on the Great Lakes for 44 years, starting out as an oiler in, I would imagine, 1931, working his way up to captain. And he was master of the pride of the American side. Fact, this would be the second Edmund Fitzgerald to sail and sink on the Great Lakes. The first one was built in 1870, a sail ship known as a schooner. It sank in 1883. Just another strange coincidence. This case is full of them. Why would someone want to name their boat after one that had sunk? I do not know. But the Fitzgerald family was into shipping, and the company bought it as an investment that they leased out. The ship was named after the CEO of the company. The story begins on the morning of November 9, when the SS Edmund Fitzgerald pulls into port at Superior, Wisconsin, dock number 1, to receive a load of taconite iron ore pellets, which is a story in itself, on a warm, sunny Indian summer day. The loaders were gravity-based. As a system of staying level, the Fitzgerald was equipped with 3 lights. Red, white, and green. Red or green was too much to one side or the other. White meant a balanced load. When she left Wisconsin on November 9, it was a fine day when they left port, with water like glass. This will be her last run of the season, in 17 years of service. Relatively young, as ships go. The Edmund Fitzgerald joined a second taconite freighter, the SS Arthur M. Anderson, by the next day, which incidentally is still in service to this day. There's a cool clip of it when it's coming into Whitefish Bay. It gives a master salute on November the 10th, 2020, to the Fitzgerald. I'll put it in the description. The cargo hold covers weigh 7 tons. It's also rimmed with 68 clamps that are supposed to be dogged down, especially in storm. Crew was known to be a little lax with this, however. But then others say that Captain McSorley, with his experience, would not have any other thing than to have them all dogged down. Through her career, she earned a few lovable nicknames. One was the Toledo Express. The other, and most popular one, was the Big Fitz. Their destination was the Sioux Locks, a 2-day sail to the southeast. The weather forecast was not unusual for November. and the National Weather Service predicted that a storm would pass just south of Lake Superior by 7 a.m. on November the 10th. The National Weather Service altered its forecast at 7 p.m., issuing gale warnings for the whole of Lake Superior. Things can change quick out on the Great Lakes. It can go from calm and smooth one minute to dark clouds over your head the next, and boiling sea. And that's precisely what happened to the two ships. They were caught in a storm. Not just any storm, the mother of all storms. Arthur M. Anderson and Edmund Fitzgerald altered course northward, seeking shelter along the Ontario shore. Just after midnight on the 10th, the temperature plunged to 37 degrees. Winds reached 60 miles per hour. Waves were cresting at 16 feet. What was forecast as a routine storm had turned into a November witch. At that point, they were not worried, because the Fitz had punched its way through many a storm. She slogged on through the night. The following daylight, on the 10th of November, the storm was still raging. In the early afternoon, both the Anderson and the Fitzgerald had made the turn at the top of the lake, southbound, and were approaching the channel between the two islands, Misshabakaton and Caribou. The shallows near Caribou Island were hazardous, well known to all lake captains. Charted as less than 40 feet deep, it was called 6 Fathom Shoal, which indicates 36 feet. The charts were from 1919, and they turned out to be off. The sharp rocks on the bottom could tear the hull of the ship wide open. The Fitz was about 15 miles ahead of the Anderson. Just before 3 p.m., Captain Cooper looked into his radar and saw that the Fitzgerald was perilously close to the 6 Fathom Shoal. He remarked, "That's closer than I would want to be." Just after passing the shallows at about 3:10 p.m., McSorley radioed Captain Cooper. He informed him that he had taken on a starboard list, had a fence rail down, and was taking high seas over a spar deck known as green water. Two Edmund Fitzgerald's 6 bilge pumps ran continuously to discharge ship water. At 4 p.m., the Anderson registered wind gusts of up to 100 miles per hour. 10 minutes later, McSorley informed Cooper that he had lost both radars. About 45 miles away at Whitefish Point, where they were headed, the beacon went out due to a power failure. Now the Fitzgerald was sailing blind, and his only savior was the Anderson to guide them. McSorley ordered the engine room to slow down so that the Anderson could catch up. The Anderson then shadowed the Fitz 9 miles behind, guiding her by radar through the treacherous seas. The two ships carried on, but the Fitz was in grave danger. The Fitzgerald was sinking. Late in the afternoon, Monday, November 10th, 1975, the wounded freighter, the Edmund Fitzgerald, was struggling against the storm to make it to Whitefish Bay. Wave heights had reached 30 feet, and the wind was gusting up to 90 miles an hour. The veteran Captain McSorley reported that they were taking heavy seas over their decks. The water is continuously there, which is called green water. He commented it was the worst sea he had ever seen. Captain McSorley remained stoic, but he knew that he had very few options. His only hope was to make it to Whitefish Bay. He was 15 nautical miles away. At one point, Cooper radioed McSorley and said, "We don't have far to go, we're almost there. Then we'll have it made." Exhausted McSorley replied, "Yes, we will." While waves increased to as high as 25 feet by 6 p.m., the Arthur M. Anderson was also struck by 70 to 75 knot gusts and rogue waves as high as 35 feet. At about 6:30 p.m., Captain Cooper took 2, possibly 3 seas that were massive over the pilot house. He said that they were 2 of the biggest seas he ever saw, and they were headed the Fitzgerald's way. A snow squall then descended. Cooper could not see the Fitzgerald on radar. It was whited out. At 7:10, the first mate of the Anderson radioed McSorley and asked him how he was making out. And his response was, "We're holding our own." And that was the last thing anyone heard from the Edmund Fitzgerald. At 7:20 p.m., the Anderson lost radar contact with the Fitzgerald. The snowstorm had stopped and he could no longer see the Fitzgerald on the radar. Cooper tried to hail the Edmund Fitzgerald by radio, but there was no response. He hailed other ships to see if they saw it or heard from it. No one heard from it. By 8:25 p.m., Cooper feared the worst. He notified the Coast Guard at Sault Ste. Marie. The Coast Guard did not have a craft that could sustain waves like there were in the storm. Their closest ship was a ship called the Woodrush. Captain Jim Hobaugh sailed the entirety of Lake Superior in 23 hours and 10 minutes, very heroically. The Arthur M. Anderson was joined Captain Erickson and the William Clay Ford as they heroically went out into the maelstrom to see if they could find any survivors. There were none. All they found was 2 destroyed lifeboats and a couple of life rings and a couple lights, and that was about it. The 730-foot freighter just disappeared without a distress call or a mayday. She went down in 540 feet with all hands. Captain Cooper thought that she took a nosedive to the bottom because she bottomed out on Caribou Shoal. There's a lot of controversy and mystery surrounding the whole thing. An aircraft fitted with magnetic detection equipment located the Edmund Fitzgerald at the bottom of Lake Superior in 540 feet, lying in 2 sections. Her stern section upside down. She went down 15 nautical miles from the safety of Whitefish Bay. The Coast Guard investigation lasted almost 2 years for some reason. They concluded that the Fitzgerald's hatches were improperly fastened and the cargo filled with water. That she simply lost buoyancy and dove into the waves and never returned. But most think that the Fitzgerald ripped her bottom open by getting too close to the rocks at 6 Fathom Shoal near Caribou Island. Very shortly after he passed the shoals is when he reported his starboard list. There have been a few high-profile expeditions to the wreck, which yielded not much more information, but over the years the family grew disturbed from all the ongoing dives. The Canadian government outlawed the wreck to all diving. There are 29 souls entombed within. It's the only wreck in the Great Lakes that cannot be dove on. I understand that part, but with all due respect to the families, don't they give the company a pass by doing that? I would want to know what happened. The company conveniently hides behind the law, so they won't ever find out what really happened in case they may have to pay compensation, because they have no public responsibility anymore, since another Fitzgerald died in a different November. With his death went all public responsibility to corporations. And that's not just an opinion, that's the truth. They did have an expedition to raise the bell, and there's a good documentary on that. As a matter of fact, I acquired a whole playlist from researching this. There's no way that I could cover it in a half an hour or even an hour. I thoroughly recommend visiting the links in the description. If this interests you, you'll find it all there. A good one to see is History Mystery Man. Captain Walton, who he interviews, has a lot of inside information that you won't hear on documentaries. One strange nuance, there were many, that happened was when the 1995 and final expedition arrived at the spot with the families to raise the bell. While they were down below getting it, a butterfly landed on one of the family members' fingers and remained there until the bell came to the surface. As soon as it came to the surface, it tolled and the butterfly flew away. Thought that was pretty interesting. Wonder what that was all about. I really 15 miles from shore, a butterfly lands on his finger. It's kind of strange. And the mystery of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Just click on the links if this interests you. I don't think that they will ever be able to find out how the Edmund Fitzgerald sank. The disaster is one of the best known in history of the Great Lakes shipping. Gordon Lightfoot made it the subject of his 1976 hit song, Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, after reading an article, The Cruelest Month, in the November 24, 1975 issue of Newsweek. The sinking led to changes in the Great Lakes shipping regulations and practices that included mandatory survival suits, depth finders, positioning systems, increased freeboard, and more frequent inspection of vessels. I've taken bits and pieces from all of them, pretty much. This was an event that I remember very clearly in my youth, and I always wanted to research it, and now I have. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I would like to know what you think. Please comment, share, and give it a thumbs up if you can, to help it along. And do please donate if you can. All my work is 100% free. In a broadcast shortly afterward, the United States Coast Guard warned all shipping that the Soo locks have been closed. Thanks for watching. Take care. I'll see you on down the road. For a time, Arthur M. Anderson directed Edmund Fitzgerald toward the relative safety of Whitefish Bay. Sometime later, McSorley told Woodward, "I have a bad list. I have lost both radars and am taking heavy seas."
We called the Fitzgerald to check on him and see how he was doing, and the last contact we had with him, he said, well, he was going along fine and holding his own and no problems. And then he kind of relaxed a little bit, you know, and he was in the sea return, and then when we couldn't see his lights, we figured we should be catching him a little bit because he'd checked down, and then he just wasn't there.